Good day, boxing fans. Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the man from down under, the Aussie Hope, and the man known as the Soul Taker will try and see if he can continue his run and defend his WBO junior middleweight world title and add the vacant WBC title to it. And I'm talking, of course, about Tszyu, who will be defending his title against the guy known as the Towering Inferno, the very tall and rangy Sebastian Fundora. Is Fundora a potential banana skin? Stick around and let's break down the fight. So, Tszyu was supposed to fight Keith Thurman, but Thurman got injured. Thurman's been injury plagued for his entire career, we know that. And in steps as a late replacement, Sebastian Fundora. This is a Mexican fighter who is almost 6'6" tall, and his nickname of a Towering Inferno, I believe that originally belonged to a fighter by the name of Celestino Caballero, if my memory serves me correctly. He's a tall and rangy southpaw, and a tall and rangy southpaw usually presents problems. So, has Tszyu jumped out of a frying pan and into the fire by replacing Fundora by replacing Keith Thurman with Sebastian Fundora? Let me know in the comment section. Is Fundora a more difficult opponent? I think stylistically, yes, Fundora maybe is. I don't think he's the talent of what at least once was Keith Thurman, but he does present some difficulties. Now, Fundora, as I've said, is very tall and very rangy for weight, sort of a tall string bean. And such fighters can be very effective if they know how to leverage their height and reach into their power, and if they know how to control the distance to use that height and reach. I'm thinking, of course, about Vladimir Klitschko, and to an extent his brother Vitaly as well. And going back and showing my age, Tommy Hearns, of course, is a tall, rangy fighter and really could hammer with that right hand and knock guys out. But Hearns could also get into trouble because he had a tendency of being dragged into brawls when he would be better suited boxing, as we saw in his first fight against Sugar Ray Leonard and his fights of Iran Barkley. Now, I don't for a minute think Fundora is even remotely a Tommy Hearns, so don't get all up in my grill about that. But could he give not Tszyu, but Tszyu, Kostya, of course, is more famous dad. Could he give Tszyu trouble? I think he can. A guy that's a southpaw, and Tszyu hasn't fought a southpaw in a very, very, very long while. We have to go way back to earlier in his career for that. Can be trouble because Tszyu is a come forward, stalking, sort of heavy-handed puncher. He looks unsophisticated on tape. He looks beatable because he sort of plods off here with his hands held high. He sometimes squares up. He doesn't have a huge work rate. He fights at a very steady pace. But he's a guy that depends on his offensive technique and his hard hands and his strength. I believe Tszyu, if I look at him, he's very strong. He doesn't take a backward step, and nobody's been able to move him backward. And he has been surprised by right hands, like we saw in his one fight there in the USA against Terrell Gausha. But he got up easily enough and he won the fight. So he's hittable and he has got his flaws, but he keeps on winning because he keeps on coming and the guys can't move him back. Now, if we look at Sebastian Fundora, the worrying thing was in his last fight against Brian Mendoza, he was knocked out in the 7th round. I believe he was slightly up on the cards. And Brian Mendoza, of course, went on to challenge Tszyu, and he went the distance. That was Tszyu's last fight, not his most impressive outing. Now, I think Sebastian Fundora needs to use the obvious things he has. He needs to use his height and reach. He needs to pop that jab. He needs to throw many punches, and he needs to keep moving around Tszyu and just use his height and reach and try and outbox Tszyu. But the thing is, I don't think that is Sebastian Fundora's mental fighter's identity. Sometimes someone is served to be a really good boxer, but his mentality is that of a fighter, that of a slugger. And I think that is a bit what the case is here with Sebastian Fundora. I've seen him in his fight for Erickson Lubin, for example. He stopped Lubin, but he also went down hard himself, and he took a lot of punches because he throws away his height and reach, and he stands on the inside and he trades. And he does throw good uppercuts for a tall guy. He fights well inside, but he doesn't cover up after he hits, and he gets caught like that. Now, if he's going to go and do what comes naturally to him and go and stand there and trade with Tszyu, I think he's going to be going home early on the canvas. And that would not be good for Sebastian Fundora. He's going to have to change his start up a little bit. He's going to have to move and step around Tszyu, and he's going to have to utilize his reach to keep Tszyu on the outside. And if he has a steady work rate, it should not be too difficult to win the first few rounds, because Tszyu just keeps coming, and he can be dangerous early if he catches you. He's a very good finisher, but he doesn't have a very big work rate. Tszyu has a below average, slightly below average work rate for that weight division. So if he can do that, Sebastian Fundora is in with a chance. There's a lot of people giving him a good chance. But having watched Sebastian Fundora, having seen how he reacts when he gets hit in the Brian Mendoza fight, he took a heck of a left hook when he was standing too close to his opponent, where he didn't need to be with his natural gifts. A left hook throws him, and a big right hand and another left hook from Mendoza just planted him on the canvas, where he could see his eyes were open, but he didn't know where he was. And I think that's eventually going to be his undoing against Tszyu. Guys, tell me in the comment section, who do you think wins and why? Do you think that Fundora is a more difficult proposition than Keith Thurman? But I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say it's going to be interesting while it lasts. But Tszyu will get going. At some point, he's going to hurt Sebastian Fundora, and that will be all she wrote. I don't think Fundora has the mental discipline to box the right fight, and I don't think he has the toughness to take bombs from Tszyu for very long. So I'm going to go with Tszyu by knockout within 6 rounds. And that's what I think. Guys, please remember to hit that thumbs up button. I'll greatly appreciate it. Share the content among your boxing fans, and consider subscribing. And until I see you guys again, before I say goodbye, I've got to just be a shout out for our man in the USA, Olisani in Dongeni. The lightweight will be going on against yet another murderer's row type of opponent. Last time out he faced not Brian Barbosa, but Arnold Barbosa, and this time he is facing Raymond Murataya, and a young undefeated opponent of a high knockout ratio. So one thing about Ndongeni, you can argue whether it's wise to take 2 such tough fights back to back, but the guy is pretty much ballsy, unesibindi, like we say in the Eastern Cape. So good luck to Kolisani and Ndongeni. I just didn't have a time to break down that fight as well. And enjoy watching Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora on Saturday night from Las Vegas. And until we see each other again, remember to keep those hands up.